Davos. It's the world's top economic thinkers where they're gathering annually for more than half a century. Now, at this year's World Economic Forum, CGTN's Juliet Mann is there and will be bringing us the very latest from the talks this week.
The power elite are in town, 1,600 global businesses, 150 notable disruptors across industries, and 60 heads of state and government, including China's Premier Li Qiang, who'll ponder the global challenges the world is facing and how to solve them at the World Economic Forum's 2024 annual meeting.
The theme this year is rebuilding trust, promoting a back-to-basics spirit of openness and looking at the world's problems through four main lenses. Firstly, security. Defence spending is rising as bitter conflicts rage in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. Cyber attacks are also a growing threat. Next, economic growth and jobs. How can a decade of sluggishness be avoided? And can we harness artificial intelligence to benefit all? How should we balance the need for regulation as well as innovation for societal good? Lastly, climate change. How can we develop a carbon-neutral world by 2050?
If that all sounds a bit heavy, it's because the global risks outlook is gloomy. Last year, the buzzword was polycrisis. Lots of tensions all coming together, from environmental degradation, global conflicts and economic stress. Not much has changed since then, according to the World Economic Forum. They liken it to a big bowl of spaghetti, of complex and intertwined risks. And if you try and tug at a bit of it, it's so slippery, everything moves around. You don't know where to start. So you need a strategy, and you need people to build momentum.
So the way the program and the way the annual meeting will move and evolve over the course of the next week will be to focus a lot on solutions, to really get the leaders both from the public and the private sector come together. And what we had noticed on our side is for far too long, people have focused a lot on the diagnosis of the problems. And that's something which we want to change, and that's the narrative which we want to kind of take forward. The second front of it is to provide leaders with the right insights. Because if you are to take a decision, if you are to move towards solutions, you need to have the right insights, you need to have the right foresight for it as well.
I've got this pretty much access to all areas pass, which means that throughout the week, the CGTN team can bring you juicy interviews, insights, analysis and highlights from the change makers that we meet. Expect to hear a lot about trade, about climate change and artificial intelligence with me, Juliet Mann, in Davos.
And as Julia just mentioned, Chinese Premier Li Qiang is in Switzerland as the World Economic Forum is kicking off. He met Swiss President Viola Amherd in the capital of Bern, the two signing a joint declaration Monday to bolster free trade agreements, the first signed back in 2013, and to deepen bilateral ties between the two countries. And besides moving to upgrade the free trade deal, China is agreeing to provide visa-free entry for Swiss citizens. China is Switzerland's third largest trading partner behind the United States in the European Union. Artificial intelligence is a key issue at this year's World Economic Forum, as we just heard. The IMF is warning of AI risks to global labor markets and says it is one of the factors causing the gap between the richer and poorer economies to simply grow. Evangelos Ipsas has more.
Geopolitical uncertainty and tight financial conditions. That's what global chief economists warn will slow down economic growth. While this year's theme here at the World Economic Forum is artificial intelligence, with many wanting to know how much of an impact it will have, leading economists say it would only widen the inequality gap. Conducted each year ahead of the World Economic Forum in Davos, the survey of 60-plus chief economists drawn globally from private and public sectors attempt to sketch priorities for policymakers and business leaders. This year's outlook isn't as promising, with 56% of those surveyed answering that the global economic conditions will weaken this year. They see a significant weakening in Europe, and some even expect it to be very weak, while they expect the same for North America and the Middle East. In South Asia, East Asia, and the Pacific, things look positive, with many of those shaping the world's economy hoping to see a continuation of growth in China.
I'm expecting him to talk about how China will continue to grow, continue to steer the economic growth in the world.
And as China is one of the global leaders when it comes to artificial intelligence, many believe it will boost productivity in high-income economies over the next 5 years, but also in low-income economies at a slower rate. Although here at the World Economic Forum, they will be launching a new approach to growth and help policymakers balance it when it comes to the environment, technologies, and other priorities. Its managing director says that an economic growth for the year ahead will be tested. Evangelos Sipsas for CGTN from Davos.
And each year, Davos is very important, so we're going to take a deeper dive into what's going on there, and we're happy to be joined by Joseph Foudy, distinguished clinical professor of economics at New York's University's Stern School of Business. Joseph, thanks very much for joining us. So let's just begin by talking about who is attending, who goes there year after year. Is this the very rich as well as government entities?
Yeah, so it basically has three sets of attendees. First of all, you see government officials from around the world, and we see that this year as always. You have a large number of CEOs that underwrite the World Economic Forum and view this as an opportunity not just to learn, but to network. And then obviously you have experts du jour on whatever the key issues that are brought in to kind of run the panels and to sort of be a focal point of discussions.
And you talk about the CEOs of the economic heavyweights really moving in there to underwrite, but do they underwrite or do they just push what they really want? I mean, let's take a look at the global economic concerns. A report recently I saw that 5 richest billionaires in the world doubled their riches over the past couple of years, while the poor get poorer and poorer. The wealth disparity is a huge issue on a global scale.
Yeah, and it's obviously one that you can't help but note post-COVID, particularly because we've seen stock markets go up, and it's certainly one factor driving inequality. Obviously, people at the conference are mindful of that, but having said that, this is a conference of economic elites, and it's going to go forward this year just as it does every year.
Okay, but let's expand on that. What do they look at? What is the real goal leaving here? Is it to just secure their place either in history or at the bottom line of their bank account, or is it to really try and bring some kind of economic stability, if you will, to the world?
Yeah, so it serves a couple of purposes. One, let's just point out, with this many CEOs in one city, it's enormously useful for CEOs to meet each other on the sidelines, just as a pure sort of convention purposes. But having said that, obviously, these are highly successful companies. They care about the broader universe, both because obviously a prosperous world is good for their business, but I actually do think a lot of them look at global trends like climate change, and I think they sincerely are worried.
You know, I
How
think
much progress you get from a meeting like this is obviously a different question.
You know, Joseph, I think you really hit on something there in these sideline meetings, because we see it at every big conference. We saw it at APEC in San Francisco recently. It's these sideline meetings where people can sit down and just kind of cut to the chase and say, how do we approach this? How do we attack this problem?
Yeah, and look, personality matters. Just the ability post-COVID of both world leaders and business leaders to meet with their sort of opposite numbers around the world is really important. We're at a period of heightened political tension globally, and to even just take the edge off of some of that tension by having leaders sit together in informal meetings, I think that in and of itself is a win.
You know, and we can't talk about the economy, growth, anything without talking about AI, the AI's role for the future. It is big, and everyone is talking about it, with several nations now saying perhaps it's time to control AI development growth. Is that possible?
I think it's necessary. I think it's going to be very difficult. We're going to see lots of regulation at the state level. It just strikes me as it's going to be incredibly difficult, given the number of companies and the global scale, to get any kind of coordination. It's also going to be a real tricky in terms of winners and losers. I mean, both China and the United States are leaders in AI. Europe is sort of far behind. And for developing countries, they have to ask whether in the long run, AI plus automation really will sort of affect their ability to move up the economic ladder.
Yeah, we just saw that report that came out recently that talked about it could have a very damaging impact on people's wages all along the spectrum, from the very wealthy to the very poor.
Yeah, and if you think about it as well, is if AI gets paired with what they call manufacturing 4.0, highly automated factories, This may sort of stymie developing countries trying to move up that economic ladder through manufacturing, as the U.S., China, Japan, so many other countless countries have done over the last 100 years.
Yeah, the rich get richer. Hey, you also talked about international trade to a degree. You can't talk about that right now without talking about what's going on in the Red Sea. How valuable is it to have these titans of industry as well as government leaders all together to say, look, we cannot let this situation that really erupted in Gaza spread to the entire region?
Yeah, and right now the Red Sea is what I'll call it's grinding in the gears of world trade. So it's adding to the sort of the time and cost of shipping, but it's not yet critical. But we've taken freedom of the seas and sort of efficient global supply chains for granted for the last century. What if this is a sort of precursor to come of sort of more conflict spreading over in a world in which sort of any small group can use cheap drones, missiles,
Right.
disrupt global trade?
Indeed. Joseph, thanks so much. We certainly appreciate your insight into this. It's a very important meeting. I'd love to go there and see what's going on, but we thank you for your insight.